Welcome back to the official review. I'm Johnny, that's Sam, that's Steve, and today we're talking about the Minnesota Twins ownership deciding not to sell the team. I want to talk to you guys through the last couple of years of being a Minnesota Twins fan from an outside perspective. So in 2022, they make the playoffs and they win their first series, a playoff series, for the first time in 20 years. Big moment for the franchise. They lose the next round, but then that offseason, their ownership decides they're going to cut payroll by about $30 million. So the next year they come back, they're not as good. The year following, 2024, they're not as good. They haven't been nearly back to the playoffs since that year. Then this last year, the Twins ownership announced they were going to sell, to the celebration of many Twins fans because the Twins ownership is bad. And so now announcing that they're not going to sell, many Twins fans are really confused and kind of deflated by this because it's clear that Twins ownership isn't going to sell. But do you guys think this is the worst ownership situation in sports? What do you think?
I personally go into the NFL just because I know more about that. I think it's the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they're notoriously cheap with their players offering contracts. Like, Trey Hendrickson, they don't want to pay him. They drafted Shamar Stewart in the first round, and it was almost getting to the point where he was going to not sign with them and then enter the 2026 NFL draft. Like, if you're going to draft a guy, you better be prepared to pay him. And on top of that, from NFLPA surveys where players vote on like their team and like facilities and how their families are treated, the Bengals were, for treatment of families, got F-, for food and dining area, got an F. For ownership overall, they got a C. There's notoriously bad ownership. So I'm going to go with the Bengals just because I know more about them.
F- for treating how they treat families is crazy.
Apparently it's like the daycare they offered. Like they would make, a lot of teams will give you free daycare. So like, you could drop your kids off there during the day. They make you pay extra. Like they don't treat their families well. They make them pay for everything. I think the food court may have been like, you have to pay for your food rather than just like giving you free food.
Right.
They're very cheap. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy. All that stuff is so important for attracting free agents and talent to come there. And, like you'd think that more owners would be more interested in kind of bolstering that stuff. My worst ownership situation is the Knicks and James Dolan. So after what seemed like a long stretch of horrible teams, it seems like the Knicks have turned a corner. They've had some continuity. They made this wonderful Jalen Brunson signing, and they got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, of course. And then they fired the coach who took them there and was able to build this whole culture around the Knicks again. It sounds like James Dolan did have a part in this firing, and the main thing with that was that they did not have a replacement in mind, right? So they're like, could Jason Kidd be available? Could Quinn Snyder from the Hawks be available? Coaches that are already employed. So there's a lot of floundering until they ended up with Mike Brown, who I don't know if he's an upgrade there. So there's a few more things with James Dolan because I think it sort of extends past like mismanagement. And so basically in 2007, James Dolan was named as a defendant in a sexual assault lawsuit by a Knicks executive. He ended up having to pay $3 million for that. He never talks to the media. He regularly bars media members who are critical of him. Famously, whenever a Knicks player is talking to media, there needs to be some sort of PR person present at all times. The front office is notoriously tight-lipped. But what I want to focus on is James Dolan banning people from MSG. All right, so famously, Charles Oakley was banned for getting into an altercation with a security guard in 2017. After that, there was a Hot 97 radio host guy that made Ban Dolan t-shirts. That guy was thrown out of a concert at Radio City because remember, MSG owns Radio City and other venues around the nation, including the Sphere in Vegas.
Like in retaliation, you're saying? Like was he wearing the shirt at Radio City, or was he wore the shirt and then we found him at Radio City and he had to go?
Good question. When you enter Madison Square Garden, you'll notice a sign that says you are consenting to facial recognition technology.
Oh.
Right? And you go in and surrender your biometric data to MSG Entertainment, essentially. So what James Dolan has used this data for is to retaliate against anyone that is representing a lawsuit against MSG. And not only that, for instance, Morgan & Morgan represents a lot of people. It's a massive law firm. I'm sure you see signs for them everywhere.
888-8888 or whatever the number is.
What the MSG Networks or MSG Entertainment does is have the entire database of every single person that works at Morgan & Morgan, regardless if they're on the case representing someone that like tripped at MSG or whatever, and bans all of them from all MSG events. So there's a story in 2022 about a woman who was a lawyer and was at the Rockettes at Radio City with her 7-year-old daughter, and essentially was ripped away from her family and kicked out because her face pinged the facial recognition system. Then basically the state liquor board got involved because there's part of the stipulation around that is that they need to let in the general public in order to have a liquor license. And so during this sort of legal squabble, instead of taking any sort of responsibility for this sort of unethical facial recognition stuff, James Dolan went on TV and put up a photo and contact information of the chief of the state liquor board and basically was like, call this guy, like, and harass him. And then not only that, he hired a private investigator to follow a different state liquor board investigator around, and in like a classic like mob intimidation tactic stuff.
That should be kind of illegal.
I mean, I think it was in legal parameters. He did end up winning that state liquor license lawsuit, but you know, the guy basically operates the Knicks like a mob boss and continues to get away with it.
Dude, he might not let us into the MSG now.
James Dolan. I'm just kidding. Please.
That's actually ridiculous. The freaking thing where I thought the facial recognition was, because my brother told me about it, was for like safety and stuff. So like if dangerous people got in the stadium. But if you work at Morgan & Morgan, you can't go to a Knicks game or see the Rockettes is freaking insane. That's wild. That's a big law firm.
It's funny because like I could have mentioned Dan Snyder just a few years ago, and he probably would have topped the list of worst ownerships in sports because just how ugly he was, not as a person, well, a little bit, but as a human, ugly human. Just so much wrongdoing in that organization. One example of it is the then Redskins had a GM who was a recovering alcoholic, and him and Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen love having beers in the office. And the guy asked, like, hey, can we get rid of these beers? And they said no. That's just one example of millions of how terrible of a person Dan Snyder is. But he's gone. So thumbs up to that.
And they immediately got better, which is freaking crazy.
Immediately.
Ownership does matter. Like the players do matter. Like they matter the most, but like ownership 100%.
It sets a culture. It really does. And it depends on like, you know, how the team is built, but it really defines how the team, you know, the makeup of the team is how ownership handles things. And I think one great example of that is my example in Major League Baseball, and that is the Pittsburgh Pirates and their owner, Bob Nutting. Bob Nutting took over the team in 2007, and since then the Pirates have been the fourth worst team in baseball and have run a bottom 5 payroll, I think, every year since then. I want you to guess how much money they've spent on their biggest free agent signing in franchise history.
Per year or for full contract?
Per year.
I'm going to go with $18 million per year.
24.
It is $8.5 million on a 2-year, $17 million deal they gave to Russell Martin about 12 years ago.
That's insane, dude. The guy, like, there are guys who barely play that make way. Yoshida on the Red Sox gets paid like $22 million a year. I could be wrong on that, but it's way more than $9 million, whatever you just said. They should be removed. That's like having someone in your fantasy football league who doesn't check their roster. Like, if you're not trying to make your team better, you should be out of the league. They might have the best bargaining chip in the entire baseball right now with Paul Skeens. So it's basically a guarantee that Paul Skeens is going to leave the Pirates in the next couple of years. But Johnny, you know baseball better. How long do they have him under arbitration?
He's under contract for 5 more years, including this year. So unless this, because they changed the rules with Super 2, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure he has 5 more years of team control. Yeah, I mean, they have given money to extensions. You know, they gave Andrew McCutchen an extension back in the day. But it's really been just terrible ownership, no investment in the team. It's funny because so in 2007, Nutting was a co-owner of the team. Before then, the Pirates would roll out like higher payrolls, you know, being top half of the league pretty consistently. And ever since he took over as principal owner, it's been downward, a really stark downhill drop. Just to piss off Pirates fans more, I want you to know who was considered to be their owner before they chose Nutting. And it was Mark Cuban, who ended up buying the Mavericks and rebuilding that franchise instead.
The Pirates may have a World Series if Mark Cuban was their owner. I know, because it's a game where you can like buy stuff and like ownership truly matters because there's no salary cap. There's a good chance Mark Cuban could have gotten them a World Series in that time.
I saw that Trump tried to buy the Twins back when the Pohlad family actually got it, and he was offering $50 million, and they sold it to the Pohlad family for $36 million.
Damn!
Wow.
Don't exactly know what's going on there, but it's kind of crazy.
That's less than Jaylen Brown gets paid per year. The Pirates, they need a new owner because that's such a swag franchise in terms of like memorabilia and uniforms and just.
It's such a rich baseball history too. I mean, one thing Nutting does as an owner is he ties payroll to concession price stands, like sales and ticket prices, and that's it. And so like if they're selling tickets, he'll spend a little bit, I guess. But you know, the bottom line, you know, if you don't spend money, you're not going to get tickets. It doesn't go the other way.
Exactly. The chicken or the egg. You know?
A franchise from the core, a really great baseball franchise, and a great baseball city, one of the best parks in baseball. And so it's a shame that like this beautiful area for baseball that was such a strong cultural point for the city has just become a husk of what it was.
It does stink because I think it's a great franchise. I love their uniforms. They made the playoffs once in my lifetime with McCutchen. I think they were like pretty good. I think it was the year the Phillies may have won it, or maybe the year that the Rockies got to the World Series out of the NL. Yeah, they're a pretty disappointing franchise.
If you're a billionaire, do better.
Yeah,
for real. If you're gonna buy a sports team, take care of it.
I agree. Because a lot of the people have ownership in sports teams for tax reasons. I heard like that's why Patrick Mahomes, or it's a big perk. Like Patrick Mahomes bought a team. It's a good way to like get out of paying some taxes. So,
but it's also like an investment because I mean, did you see the franchise values list that got released yesterday? I mean, I think the cheapest franchise value is like $10 billion now in the NFL. It's just an investment. So you put a little bit of money in and you don't have to spend because your investments can keep going up because it's, for now, we'll see. I mean, when the TV bubble pops and when sports betting doesn't go, you know, that's when they're investing so much in sports betting because that's the new revenue stream. But if that doesn't go their way, who knows what the profits margins will look like in sports. So what do you think? Who has the worst ownership in sports? Let us know in the comments below.